Pointillism, also known as Neo-Impressionism, is a technique of painting in which small, distinct dots of colors are applied in patterns to form an image.
Georges Pierre Seurat. He was born on December 2nd, 1859 in Paris. He is known for his innovative use of drawing media and for devising the painting techniques known as Pointillism. Seurat began in the summer of 1884 the painting named A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. This painting took him 2 years to complete it. The painting shows members of each of the social classes participating in various park activities. The tiny juxtaposed dots of multicolored paint allow the viewer's eye to blend colors optically, rather than having the color physically blended on the canvas. Figures simulate mannequins, and they are distributed in a very rigorous way. The way that he painted the shadows is really interesting because it shows that the painting is based in a shiny summer day. In the painting Jeune Femme Cependant, the model was Madeleine Noblet, who was his couple and also mother of his son. Unfortunately, Georges Seurat died in Paris on March 29, 1891, at the age of 31, and the cause of his death is uncertain. His son died 2 weeks later from the same disease. His last work, The Circus, was left unfinished at the time of his death. The painting The Circus shows a ballerina that is over a horse and a clown, and also a man that is doing pirouettes. He used warm colors such as yellow, orange, and other colors. Nowadays, the painting A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte, that is one of the most notable work of Georges Pierre Seurat, is in the permanent collection at the Art Institute of Chicago. It was said Pointillism is an impressionist painting technique developed by Georges Seurat, and it is based on color theory and the use of complementary colors in particular. The painting is created using countless tiny dots of pure color placed in close proximity to each other. When viewed at a distance, the human eye is meant to fuse the individual dots together into areas of solid color.
In this pictorial technique, the color pigments are no longer mixed either on the palette or directly on canvas, but instead placed as small dots side by side. Mixing of colors takes place from a suitable distance in the observer's eye as an optical mixture. Georges Seurat and Paul Signet developed the technique in 1886, branching from Impressionism. The term Pointillism was first coined by art critics in the late 1880s to ridicule the works of this artist, and is now used without its earlier mocking connotation. The movement Seurat began with this technique is known as Neo-Impressionism. The Divisionists, too, used a similar technique of patterns to form images, though with larger cube-like brush strokes. In the early 1880s, French painter Georges Seurat studied workings on color theory by French chemists Eugène Chevreul, Charles Henry, and American physicist Odin Rudd, and invented a new painting technique that he named separation of color or divisionism, the main advantage of which is to give a greater vibrancy of color. As it mentioned before, the technique relies on the ability of the eye and mind of the viewer to blend the color spots into a full range of tones. It is related to divisionism, a more technical variant of the method. Divisionism is concerned with color theory, whereas Pointillism is more focused on the specific style of brushwork used to apply the paint. It is a technique with few serious practitioners today, and it is notable seen in the works of Seurat, Signac, and Cross. However, see also Andy Warhol's earliest works and pop art. The practice of pointillism is in sharp contrast to the traditional methods of blending pigments on a palette. Pointillism is analogous to the four-color CMYK printing process used by some color printers and large presses that place dots of cyan, magenta, yellow, and K. Televisions and computer monitors use a similar technique to represent image colors using red, green, and blue colors. If red, blue, and green light are mixed, the result is something close to white light. Painting is inherently subtractive, but pointillism colors often seem brighter than typical mixed subtractive colors. This may be partly because subtractive mixing of the pigments is avoided, and partly because some of the white canvas may be showing between the applied dots. The painting technique used for pointillism color mixing is at the expense of the traditional brushwork used to delineate texture. The majority of pointillism is done in oil paints. Anything may be used in its place, but oils are preferred for their thickness and tendency not to run or bleed. Camille Pissarro, known as the father of Impressionism, Pissarro painted rural and urban French life, particularly landscapes in and around Pontoise, as well as scenes from Montmartre. His mature work displays an empathy for peasants and laborers, and sometimes evidences his radical political leanings. He was a mentor to Paul Cézanne and Paul Gauguin, and his example inspired many younger artists, including Californian Impressionist Lucy Bacon. Pissarro's influence on his fellow Impressionists is probably still underestimated. Not only did he offer substantial contributions to the Impressionist theory, but he also managed to remain on friendly, mutually respectful terms with such difficult personalities as Edgar Degas, Cézanne, and Gauguin. Pissarro exhibited at all 8 of the Impressionist exhibitions. Moreover, whereas Monet was the most prolific and emblematic practitioner of the Impressionist style, Pissarro was nonetheless a primary developer of Impressionist technique. Pissarro experimented with new Impressionist ideas between 1885 and 1890. Discontented with that he refers to as Romantic Impressionism, he investigated Pointillism, which he called Scientific Impressionism, before returning to a purer Impressionism in the last decade of his life. Flock of Sheep After the Harvest. In this painting it is possible to see the empathy for peasants and laborers that Camille had. The flock of sheep was returning while all people were working in their farming activities.
Henry Edmund Ross is one of the most underrated modern artists. He is associated with the New Impressionism movement, led by Georges Seurat and Paul Cézanne, who introduced the painting technique referred to dots of pure color, also known as Pointillism. In his artistic development, Ross was influenced by his friendship and affinities with Luc Signac, André Dark, and Henry Charles Malone, He later moved to the Mediterranean coast, gave his work fresh impetus. Despite the fact that he was friend of Signac and Seurat, Henry Edmond Cross does not enjoy the same renown. Henry Edmond Joseph Delacroix was born in Douai, in northern France, on 20 May 1856. 10 years later, his family moved near Lille, a northern French city close to the Belgian border. His cousin Alcide recognized Henry's artistic talent and was very supportive of his artistic inclinations. He even financed the boy's first drawing instruction the following next year. His studies continued for a short time in Paris in 1875, before returning to Lille, and in 1878 he started his studies at the École des Beaux-Arts, the Fine Arts School, and in the Academy of Design and Architecture. Henry Edmond Joseph Delacroix, he took the name Cross in 1883 to avoid confusion with Eugène Delacroix, or the academic painter Henry Eugène Delacroix. Cross' earliest works, portraits, and still lifes were in the dark colors of realism. He painted many landscapes on a trip to the Alpes Maritimes, accompanied by his family, which he exhibited at the night exposition. It was in that trip where he met his friend Paul Signac. After years of painting Pointillism, he decided to move away from it. Like the other neo-impressionists, Cross was close to the anarchist movement. Between 1895 and 1903, Cross's style continued to evolve, but this time he clearly separated touches were now more irregular, and instead of discoloring his colors, he intensified them by using them pure. One of his latest paintings that he made was the Saint-Tropez Channel, where he tried to capture the serenity of the Mediterranean coast. Moving to Saint-Tropez, he found the inspiration that he needed due to his rheumatism pain. Close to him, it was his friend Van Riesenberg, who had bought a lodge house near Cross-Combe. In the picture, we realize how Henry Edmond Cross was little by little stepping away from the Pointillism, but preserving parts of the style that he learned in his whole life, such as the use of oil and painting hills next to the bluish Mediterranean.
As we've said, Pointillism is a technique of painting in which small, distinct dots of color are applied in patterns to form an image. Another great Pointillism painter was Paul Signac. Paul Victor Jules Signac was born in Paris in 1863. He studied architecture for 2 years before deciding at the age of 18 to pursue a career as a painter, after attending an exhibit of Monet's artwork. As Signac loved sailing, his most representative paintings are a series of watercolors of French harbor cities. In 1988, he met Claude Monet and Georges Seurat. He was struck by the systematic working methods of Seurat, and later became Seurat's faithful supporter, friend, and heir, with his description of Pointillism. The other passion of Jules Signac was sailing. He began to travel in 1892, sailing in a small boat called Olympia, as Manet's painting, to almost all the ports of France, Netherlands, and around the Mediterranean, as far as Constantinople, basing his boat as Saint-Tropez always. From his various ports of call, Signac brought back vibrant and beautiful watercolors and landscape paintings. We can admire this at his painting called Port de Marseille, which is in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. With a Pointillism technique, Signac reflected the vessels, the water, and the buildings, creating a colorful mosaic. At this painting, sunlight is simulated with very small brushstrokes, in contrast with the violet undertone of the city at the horizon. Pointillism technique used at this painting can also be described as divisionism. Signac improved even more than Seurat the pointillism technique, since he also implemented methodic square division at his paintings. This provides a very different effect from the round dots used by Seurat. As a neo-impressionism painter, he influenced some of the next generation artists. Some of them would be Henri Matisse and André Derain in particular, thus playing a decisive role in the evolution of Fauvism. Signac was the president of the Société d'Artistes Indépendants from 1908 until his death in 1935.